Hello, good morning. Thank you for staying here on the AM show. We start off our big stories this morning from the pharmaceutical industry. The Ghana National Chamber of Pharmacy is warning of an impending action, and it is as a result of shortage of medicines. As they say, the current economic challenges is creating a lot of problems. Businesses are struggling to stay afloat. But how can we avoid this crisis? We will be speaking to persons who play key roles in this industry. David Kafui-Kluche is a rep from the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association of Ghana, and he's on my far left. And just on my immediate left, William Idum-Ado is president of the Pharmaceutical Importers and Wholesalers Association of Ghana. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And also via Zoom, we've got Dr. Kwame Sapon-Misidu, who is a fellow of CDD. Let me start off with my guest in the studio, then I'll come to you, Dr. Kwame Sapon-Misidu. Mr. Kluche, so you are those who manufacture pharmaceuticals in this country. How exactly is the current economic crisis affecting your business?
Thank you very much, and good morning to the listeners. Viewers, I would like to say we have been very significantly impacted. Pharmaceuticals requires a lot of importation of active pharmaceutical raw materials for our production processes, and all these things are bought overseas and require a lot of dollar component to purchase these things. So with the current escalation or depreciation of the cedi against the dollar, it makes it very difficult for us to plan and manufacture and price appropriately to the requirements of budgets of our citizenry in the country.
I want to find out, these active ingredients, can't they be produced locally?
Very, very few. Very, very few. The vast majority of them have to be brought in from abroad because they are at a pharmaceutical grade quality. And we don't have the capacity to do a lot of the pharmaceutical grade quality API, active pharmaceutical ingredients in the country.
I'm sure it's pretty obvious how it will affect you for wholesalers and importers.
Yes.
But just paint a picture to us. Since the year started till now, what has the difference been?
Okay, thank you, Bernice. And good morning to viewers. As a pharmaceutical importer association, we need Forex to do the imports. Beginning of the year, the dollar was hovering around 6 to the cedi. So let's just take buying a product for $1 at FOB. As we speak today, the same $1, it's about, I don't know, whether 14 or 15. So without even bringing the product in Ghana, the cost at the location where you are going to pick it from has dropped. In terms of your amount of money you need to bring the same item, $1, you need about 15 cedis. You are not talking about your bank loan, which has also doubled to almost 35 or 38%. We've not brought in your taxes at the port, which has also doubled because as the cedi depreciates, the taxes also go up because the taxes are pegged against the dollar at the port, which changes every Monday. So right from the word go, your amount of money that you were using to do a business has depreciated more than 50 or 60%. And that's the state we find ourselves in now. So we are really, really under pressure to survive, because our survival is in the interest of every patient and the population at large, because health is wealth and health borders on security. Because if you have a citizenry that is not healthy, in a way, it affects all the sectors. So we are not happy about what is happening, because it's made prices of pharmaceuticals very high. And it's affecting the patients. And it's affecting, as much as our capital is being depleted, it's affecting the patient as well. Because let's face it, salaries haven't doubled 100%. But as we speak, there are some pharmaceuticals that have doubled in price. Just at the FOB level, the cost, because the CD has depreciated more than 100%.
Right. I'll come back to you to take more on this, but when you say that this has really affected the patient, I remember a story we did, a particular edition of our Living Standard series, where a young girl at the University of Ghana who is diabetic said that she now skips her insulin shots because it's become quite expensive for her to afford a regular system that she used to have for herself. But let me bring in Dr. Kwame Sapong-Esiedu, who is a fellow of CDD. So, Doc, we've heard from Mr. Kluche and Mr. Addo here in the studio. But from where you sit, they say there is an imminent collapse of the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, we're being told now by the Ghana Medical Association that the decision to employ the cash and carry basis for pharmaceuticals will be the start of the collapse of the National Health Insurance Scheme. How do we handle this situation?
Thank you and good morning. It's rather sad, to be honest. And I say so because if people go back to the CDD portal and blogs, we put out alerts in June and again in August, pointing to the trends in the alteration in the pressures in the pharmaceutical supply chain from the wholesale standpoint and the retail standpoint. At that time, the change in price between December 2021 and June of 2022 was between 33 and 49%. The CD depreciation was just about 20%. And we did predict that things were going to get worse. And we did make suggestions as to how we could bring this down by providing forex at preferential rates to pharmaceutical manufacturers, wholesalers, and importers. Because just as producer price inflation trickles down, wholesale price inflation in the pharmaceutical sector also trickles down to the retail sector. And the end user tends to bear the brunt. So I'll paint a picture. In December of 2021, if you added forex fluctuation, bank rates, and inflation, it was about 40%. If you did that today, it's 114%. If you then do a cost correction of prices of pharmaceuticals in December of 2021 and today, the average is about 127% change in price. Some are as high as 270%. And the sad truth is I had a conversation with some pharmacies yesterday, and a lot of retail pharmacies are trading at a loss. The reason they are is because, like the wholesalers and manufacturers have said, when they bring the products in, and let's say they brought a product in August when the dollar was somewhere around 8 cedis, they've got to make a projection as to giving credit to the retailers for, say, a month, 30 days, when they will get their money back and what the dollar would be to reflect them getting forex to go back and import. At the same time, they are dealing with the local inflationary pressures, which impacts on the salary of their staff. So unless we look at the key two things, which is forex, because if you look at 2020 data, Ghana's pharmaceutical industry was about $660 million US dollars, and it was growing by 5.5%. 85% of this market is forex modulated. So over 500 million of that market, even the manufacturing that goes on in Ghana, which is 23% of our pharmaceutical product, is almost 85% dependent on forex, like my colleagues in the studio have said. So unless we stop the forex depreciation, and also give them preferential forex, maybe from the central bank, and also ensure that either pharmaceutical imports are limited by their tax bans, we are not going to see the end of this. But before I end, let me tell you the impact on the NHIS. Currently, if you look at the NHIS formula, that is being used to reimburse pharmacies, that's the community pharmacy and hospitals. The prices are about 35% below the market price. I have seen a circular yesterday from the NHIS saying that they are going to reopen negotiations for the pricing because co-payment is becoming a problem. If they do that, their drug bill is going to go up by about 35 to 40%. If it does, what would then happen is because their inflows is CD modulated, how it's funded based on taxes, based on people who pay premiums, they have no scope in accommodating that drug bill. The option would be they'll delay payments. At the moment, they are between 6 and 13 months behind anyway. They'll delay payments, which would then mean that the cash that the retailers and manufacturers and importers are looking for would be unavailable, the wholesalers are looking for would not be available to the retailers. The retailers would not be able to stock their shelves and would suddenly see a lack of supply of pharmaceuticals. That is the critical situation that we were pointing out in June and in August at CDD. Sadly, we are at this point. And we're doing a body of work current on retail-based inflation. I can put some of the figures out because I've shared some on my Facebook wall. If you look at locally manufactured paracetamol, even though it is not an expensive product, the price between December and now is about 201% on average across the country. And paracetamol is bread and butter that anyone has to buy. If you look at some of the antimalarials, it's about 101%. That is unsustainable. It just is not sustainable for the government, for our health sector, the hospitals, for the patients. Because even now, with NHIS as it is, 52% of our population are actually paying out of pocket for their health care, either through payments in the pharmacy or payments in hospitals, clinics, etc. How do we sustain this? It's not sustainable. So we need to go to the base, which is clearly the forex fluctuation, and also look at the banking rates, because health is wealth.
Right.
It drives our human resource, and we cannot do it any other way.
Right, Doc. I'll allow you to breathe for now. So the Ghana Medical Association is asking government, Mr. Kuche, to try and halt this decision by your chamber to go cash and carry. They say this will affect NHIA, and we've just heard Doc clearly explain how the process works. Are you willing in any way to compromise? Are you willing? Is there anything that will make you say, okay, we will still serve persons on the NHIA or who belong to the NHIS, and then expect government to give us our money later?
Thank you, Denise. Thank you. At the press conference yesterday, the three respective associations have written to the Honorable Minister for Health, and we've asked him to invite us for a meeting. The whole idea is that we officially notify him of our decision and to see how government wants to dialogue with the associations to do it. At the end of the day, we have invested in manufacturing, and we've invested significant amounts of money to produce drugs to the citizenry of this country for the next 50 years. It is not, we have not taken that decision lightly, right? We are in this thing for the long haul. I can tell you, it even hurts us that we are not able to sell. Because if I sell one unit, I'm selling at a loss, or the association is selling at a loss. The members are selling at a loss because of the forex situation and the devaluation of the cedi. So what we want to do is that we want to dialogue with the government. What is absolutely will not be acceptable is the current situation. I cannot take money borrow money from the bank in January, produce the products, sell to the facilities, and expect to be paid 12 months after. In January, the CD to the dollar was 5 cedis, 80 pesos. Now we're talking about 14 and upgoing. By the time I sell every batch of products that I do, I have lost the profit. For the profit is gone. My working capital is decimated. If not 50%, 60% is gone. So every time I have to produce another batch, I have to take more working capital from the bank. I have to take more working capital from the bank. My profitability is not there, and the cash is also not there because somebody is holding on to the money, and that is not a sustainable business model. What is important is that we have to provide drugs for the security, the risk, to solve the risk issues in this country. And the current model is not helping that. Companies will go under. So we have to engage with government. Yes, we will engage with government because all the products are in the country. And I can tell you, we are still producing, just that we are not able to sell for 9 months credit. Importers are bringing products in, they just can't give it out for 9 months credit. So the government must come, restore confidence in this market, and I can tell you there are people up and down in this country who are worried about this proposal. The government can take the initiative, restore confidence, and come to some negotiation with us, understand the challenges that the industry is facing. And this is a very important industry to the government and to the whole country. And let's see what we can compromise that we can reach. But clearly, we cannot be borrowing money and throwing money 9 months. That is not a sustainable model. We want something close to cash and cash equivalent within the shortest possible time.
But considering that the NHIA has been working for a long time, do you think that this is feasible?
The challenge we think we need to do is that we are not in normal times. We have not seen the situation where the CD is falling at such a rapid rate. And therefore, we cannot use the same old models to try and solve this problem. We all have to come together and say, what do we do? At the end of the day, this is all about the customer in Savlugu, in Axim, in Takrady. That's what this is all about. And those patients must get their medicines when they go to the hospital. So we must come up with new, bold initiatives, both from our side as manufacturers, as importers, and from the government side. Because ultimately, the government is the single largest buyer on behalf of all the hospitals in the country. So if they come with a bold proposals, then we are making progress. But if we come up with the same old stalemate, oh, you supply and we will pay you when we get the money from NHIE. Nobody's able to do that because my company will not survive and members will not survive. That's the issue at stake.
Recently, we saw Guta go on a strike. Members closed their shops. This morning, they've asked the members to reopen because of the meeting they had with the president and the government chair. I'm just wondering how long you're willing to take this protest. Let me start with you, Mr. Idumadu.
As my colleague said, it's just the business model that we are changing, looking at the economic environment. The pharma industry is the only industry that has been giving credit for all these years. Because you buy your watcher along the road, you pay. You buy iron rods, you pay. You buy your cement, you pay. You go to fuel, no matter the increment, you go there, you pay. You know, but because the pharma industry is patient-centered and knowing the responsibility that's on us to make sure that people who are sick get healed so that the economy will be healthy and people can go about their normal responsibilities, we had over the years relaxed the credit facilities for the chain to run.
Okay.
As we speak now, that model can't work again.
All right, so just help us understand. So because of the example you cited earlier, so when I go to the pharmacy now, I'll pay cash for any drug that I purchase. But what you're explaining is that for you as wholesalers, you give it to these retailers at credit.
Yes.
Right? So it's not most of them at credit, and for NHIS subscribers as well.
Yeah.
But for other citizens, we also pay cash for it. I just want to create that
so what's going to happen is, with the person who goes to, or the patient who goes to the retail pharmacy, nothing will change much so long as that retail pharmacy also pays cash to the wholesaler. Now the issue will be those who don't have the funds will only have to talk to their bankers to go in for loans. Because over the period, we had been, once you give somebody credit, in a way you are financing that person's business. And the sad thing is, some of them, not all, can hold your money 3 months, 6 months, and even more. So we realized that we have to stick to our core business of being a pharma industry and not a financial institution. So we are just trying to regularize irregularities within the chain so that we can stay afloat for the benefit of the patient. Because should we go under, production will go down, essential medicine that has to come in will also go down. We were able to go through the COVID issue because at that time, the manufacturers had enough raw materials.
Okay.
The importers too had established good relationship with their suppliers. So even when the going was tough, because of the goodwill and the credibility over the period with this big international multinational, the little that they had, they could supply some to their people in Ghana here for the wholesalers to give to the retail outlet. So you realize that within the period, we didn't short a lot of medicines on the market. It was based on the credibility that the importers and manufacturers have established with their suppliers over the time. It didn't just happen. We don't want to start defaulting in payments to our principals. Because can you imagine that you've been given an LC of, let's say, 90 days, 180 days, and within the period, because you gave credit, now the value has just changed that you need double the amount to go and pay. You can't, it's not sustainable. So we are looking at a situation that it's in the interest of the country as a whole. As we've said, if you need finance, talk to the banks. The government is the biggest borrower. He has the biggest muscle. He can also talk to the bank to help pay some of these things. So that at the end of the day, the pharma industry will stay afloat and be able to provide the necessary inputs that we need in the market for everybody to be healthy.
Are we getting to the point where we are likely to see a shortage of medicines?
Not yet. Okay. Not yet, because the only thing we are doing now is to regularize the model so that along the chain, everybody will know his or her responsibility.
Okay.
Our responsibility is to make the medicines available, and is other institutions' responsibility to ensure that when they buy, they pay. Formerly, we were just giving the credit because we had the patient attacked, but we realized that as we speak now, it won't work because we are really losing capital.
So back to the NHIS issue, and so if your government doesn't heed your call or address your concerns, what would it mean for somebody who goes to the hospital showing an NHIS card?
Well, a patient who goes to the government hospitals with the NHIS card will be seen. It's just that they will know how, at the end of the visit, the pharmacy is the last place the patient visits and gets their medication, and then they go home and start their treatment, medication treatment. If there's the hospital would default to plan B, would give the patient a prescription. The patient will then go out of the hospital facility, go to the private sector, and buy, if they've got money, buy the medication. That's what will happen. It's best practice that when the patient comes in, he's seen by the doctor, they get medication on the same facility premises before they go. But if there's no medication at the government facility, the patient will just have to go to the private sector and see whether there's drugs available and if they can also afford it.
And this is already happening in government hospitals across the country, unfortunately. I have been to a government hospital where people come in with their NHIS card and the hospital just gives them a prescription. Even IV fluids. You need to cross the street and get to a pharmacy to get the
Denise,
prescription drug.
I would like to add that as far as the membership of the Manufacturers Association are concerned, we are doing all our best. We are manufacturing the products. We have not stopped. Even in these negotiations, we have not stopped. Our plants is still producing day and night. We are producing the commodities. What we are saying is that we can't sell them at a loss. Otherwise, in an inflationary environment like this, you have to think about the replacement value of the stocks. If I sell the stocks and I cannot replace it, then in 6 months' time, the warehouse will be completely empty and we have to lay off all the factory staff because we cannot replace the stock. And that is a challenge at heart.
Right. So are you able to give us, in terms of figures, how much the NHI owes pharmacies or suppliers of medication?
The industry, we don't have a figure
but they owe individual suppliers.
They owe individual suppliers who have supplies to the regional medical stores, regional health directors across the region, and it suffices to say that it's big enough because the NHI have admitted that they are 9 months to 12 months behind schedule, payment schedule, which means that goods that were supplied, if it's 9 months, somewhere in January, have still not been paid for. Goods that were supplied last November in some parts of the country have not been paid for. And with that sort of environment, we having to keep finding that all the profit, all the working capital is completely gone as a result of where the exchange rate is now. And that is the challenge for us. This is not anything other than to say there is a big the finance model we are running is not working. The government must help restore confidence in the industry. This industry came to the needs when there was a COVID. We supplied sanitizer, we supplied antibiotics, we supplied a lot of things to help stabilize the situation there. This industry cannot be allowed to go down.
Yeah.
Because if we go down, the cost to the country will be far, 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 far worse. Because now we are importer of overseas companies realize that our industry is collapsed. And therefore, if the government comes to them, they will charge any price they want. So we have to do something. And I think it's in my interest and it's in the government's interest, for the sake of that patient in somewhere in the country, right, that we engage to solve the problem. Because we both want one thing. We want to stay in business. The government wants to make sure that the health needs of the country is met. And therefore, there's a reason for us to meet together and see where we can meet halfway to make sure that the challenge is averted.
Right. Doc, this issue of the cedi's depreciation, I mean, government has been trying hard to solve the problem. In fact, we know that we have signed for a syndicated loan, $1.3 billion. It's yet to come in, but we are receiving some hints that about $790 million will be coming in this week. Today is Friday, so I don't know exactly when. But last month, we received some $750 million from the Afrexim Bank. And we saw some slight stabilization, but that did not last. At the heart of this problem is our depreciating cedi. So we definitely need to address that immediately if we want to solve this problem. From where you sit, are you confident that this problem will be dealt with in the nearest possible time?
It's difficult to say, especially with the cedi in free fall. And if you look at the fact that we are a net importing country, you ask yourself, even if we got $3 billion coming in from the IMF, what is our total imports in a year? And how is it going to be divided to reach the key sectors of the economy, one of which is the pharmaceutical industry? You also realize that a lot, because of insecurity around investments in Ghana, a lot of people who've invested in Ghana are pulling out. So even when the dollars come in, they are cutting their losses and going onto the market and buying them and actually leaving the country with their funds. And that makes it difficult for the pharmaceutical sector to get it because they are competing with these people who are exiting to other markets. So I don't think the answer to this problem lies in the money that is coming in, whether the 3 billion or the 700 or something. If you listen to my colleague, Mr. Edimoto, the minute you say the pharmacy retailer should go to the bank for a loan, what you are saying is that they should increase their prices by about 41%, because the financing that was being provided by the pharmaceutical supply chain has suddenly been taken away. And that has been the bedrock of their business. And banks are not charities. So if that person comes to them for a loan at 41%, he's got or she's got to pay back at 41%. The person can only pay back when they've sold that medicine at a profit, paid their workers, and paid the bank. So they are going to go up by 41%. They can't help it, or they go down. The problem is everyone in the country's salary hasn't gone up by 41%. So what would happen? It's going to eat into your purchasing power. Already, inflation is eating into your purchasing power. The depreciating cedi is eating into your purchasing power. If the pharmaceutical supply chain then offloads the financing to start eating into your purchasing power, because don't get me wrong, the pharmaceutical importers cannot take it. It's either they go down, and this is the real risk. If they go down, the retail side is going to go down as well, because they are holding the retail side. However, if they offload, there's a probability of the retail side going down anyway without them going down, because the retail side cannot find the finances. I don't think a lot of them have the liquidity because they haven't faced this problem before. That is why I'm saying that there needs to be a strategic approach where the sector is supplied preferentially with Forex. And if the retail side has to go to the bank, they can go to the development banks that were being set up by government, who can give them loans at a lower rate. More importantly, the Bank of Ghana would have to be mindful of the constant increase in their base rate to try and quell inflation. Because if they do that, the banks are going to buy at that rate. They've also got to trade at a profit. They are going to put their profits and funds on it. And the retail pharmacies are going to have to transfer that to anyone who is a patient. So the negotiations is what's needed, and we need to see all the pinpoints across the supply chain and deal with them in a coherent manner. This cut and paste and quick fix would not fix the sector, because now that the players in the sector who have underwritten the financing have roared like lions, nobody can stop them. And the only way is for them either to continue to take on the finance, because the banks would then, they would go to the development banks and get loans at a preferred rate, or the retail pharmacy would do it. There's no two ways about it. And government has to intervene one way or the other. Without that intervention, we are not going to see a good ending to this.
And what is the possible ending if government fails to intervene appropriately, as you have mentioned?
The first thing you would see would be a decrease in the stock availability in retail pharmacies and in hospitals. Like you said, you go to a hospital and you get a prescription. The second thing you see is that when you get that prescription and you cross that street to go and get your infusion, the prices will, just as with the spare parts situation, that's what's going to happen in pharmacy. You realize that people will say, oh, you go to Abosokai, you're going to buy the spare part, and suddenly the price has gone up by 30-40% because they said the bank rates have changed. You're going to have that in the pharmacy. That's the second thing. The third thing you're then going to see is patients actually defaulting on their compliance and concordance, which is the cooperation between them and their prescriber to take their medicines appropriately so that the outcomes of their treatments improve. They'll start defaulting on it. And unfortunately, when there's a default on concordance, there is an upward drive of excess debts. We don't need to go there. So you are looking at a long chain. I doubt if we get to the end of the chain, especially with the sector speaking up as it is. But we need all to come to the end of the table. This is the full paste, and say, where do we stop it? And I think there would have to be a stakeholder consultation. That's the only way it's going to go.
Right, Doc, in your earlier submission, you mentioned that CDD had hinted of this happening a while ago. Will you say that the Chamber of Pharmacy spoke rather a little too late?
I wouldn't say they spoke a little too late, because I remember when we put out our first alert in June, I was on a program on Joy, actually it was with Lebanese, with a colleague of mine who is with the Chamber as well, Mr. Harrison Abu-Baidoo. And they were speaking out at that point. They spoke out very strongly. And at that point, they hinted that we could go down this route. In August, when we wrote it, they also spoke out. The problem is people have failed to listen to them, right from the NHIS, right from the government. It is instructive to note that a day before their press conference, or on the day of their press conference, the NHIS put out a memorandum acknowledging all these problems and acknowledging that they need to start speaking. That, for me, was the NHIS acting too late, or the government acting too late, and not the industry speaking up too late, because at that time they had got to their third estate. And we seem to have a system where our institutions do not listen. They wait. When you talk, they just dismiss it and wait till it has virtually hit us all in the face before we start having a decent conversation. And I don't think that is how health governance should go. I've always disagreed with that sort of model.
Right, Doc. We'll leave it here with Dr. Kwame Sapong-Esidu, who is a fellow of CDD, and he was just sharing with us whether or not the Chamber of Pharmacy acted a little too late. And I've been speaking to David Kafui-Kluche, and he is with the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association of Ghana, and Mr. Edum Ado. I need to take myself. That's quite a unique name. I know Edum is in Kumasi. Yeah. I haven't heard anybody having the name Edum, but Mr. Edum Ado, who is with the Pharmaceutical Importers and Wholesalers Association. So basically, what you are asking for is an intervention from government, and also for a restructuring of the model that you've been running over the years. I just want to find out on the bit of the restructuring of the model. Will it return to what we are practicing now when things stabilize, or it's something that you think you should continue with even when we are able to arrest the force? Let me start with Mr.
Yeah, maybe when we get there, we'll cross the bridge.
Okay.
But for now, we are saying it's cash down, then you pick your goods. We want to protect the industry for the general good of the populace. As we speak now, companies are struggling to bring in imports because now you need more than double the amount in cities within this short period. And if your variety is very huge, then realize that you are in big trouble. And as I said, you have the patient in mind. So you have to maybe increase the quantum of loans that you've gone for to ensure that you're able to meet the demands. We are not happy about what is going on because, as Dr. Esidu said, once somebody defaults in compliance, it creates complications. And once it creates complications, you need more money to fix the complication even before you start talking about the real disease state. So it's in the interest of the patient, the interest of all of us, to make sure that patients don't default when it comes to compliance. Because so long as you take your medications, if you're hypertensive, diabetic, or any other disease, once you take your medication, you are good to go. So default doesn't help in any way. So what we are saying is the populace should bear with us. The institutions should appreciate the economic environment in which we are operating now and cooperate for our own mutual benefit. Other than that, once the chain breaks, everybody will be at the losing end. which we don't want such a thing to happen.
Your final words, Mr. Kluche.
My final words are that I think we have to change the face of the industry for good. And we cannot go back to drop the commodities, wait 9 months to that, because that was not a sustainable model in the first place. The government has been working with the manufacturers to all build what we call good manufacturing practice plans, which can meet any international standards. That require financing. And every time we sell for 9 months, and by the time we get paid, the money has been devalued, the real value has gone down. It means that every time we're borrowing to shore up our working capital, that is not a sustainable model. So even when the central government is able to stabilize the situation, the economic situation, and the city is stable, we still need to make sure that we get paid for the delivery of our goods. I just want to leave on this note that as an industry, we are continuing to produce. The issue is not that the commodity is not available. I can assure you the infusions, the anti-malaria drugs, the analgesics, all of those commodities are available in the country and in sufficient quantities to serve every aspect of this country, every region, every district in this country. The goods are available. What we are asking for is that let's talk about the way we reward the manufacturers and the importers for the supply of the goods. That's the issue. So we are not putting patients at risk by withdrawing the commodity completely. Let's say, let's engage and let's pay for the goods. That's all we're asking for. And I think for the interest of everybody, and from a national security risk point, I think we really need to take this engagement seriously. And we plead with authorities in government, the ministry, and the NHIA and all the key stakeholders, and let's get together with the leadership of the 3 associations and let's address this issue. Let's understand each other's perspectives and let's find a common ground that is workable.
Has government reached out to you since your press conference yesterday? Has government reached out to any of you?
No, I've been busy with all the studios.
No, we are officially also requesting for that meeting, yeah. We know over the period, but we felt that once there's a press conference, we also have to talk to them because we are implementing what we said. Yes.
Right. Thank you very much for your time here this morning,
Thank you.
gentlemen. And that has been our conversation on the impact of our economic situation on the pharmaceutical industry. It appears that there is no industry that has been left off the hook. Talk about people who produce bread, bakers, hairdressers, everybody is affected. And this time around, the Chamber of Pharmacy is letting us know what it's going through as a result of the economic situation and how it will affect all of us if things are not addressed urgently. Well, let's go now to Kojo Brace, who's joining us live from the Central Business District in Accra. He has an update on what is happening after Guta called off their strike. Hello, Brace. What have you observed today? Apologies, we've lost my colleague Samuel Kojo Brace there.